everyone, welcome to StudyIQ English. Well, India is a socialistic democracy. This is a principle that we opted for long back, in fact, during the 1940s Bombay Plan. We committed to providing welfare to the vulnerable communities. In fact, if you look at our preamble, then we are a sovereign, socialist, secular, democratic republic. That means we do believe in distributive equality. And today we are talking about a topic that's very critical for GS paper 2, social justice, as we are looking at the case study of a region in Maharashtra that has been making headlines for the increasing number of infant and child death, increasing maternal health problems, malnourishment, and we know that malnourishment is a leading cause of low productivity, immature, early, premature death in Indian population, which is quite paradoxical given the fact that today, in a generally aging world, in a world that's becoming a grey society, silver economy, which has the predominance of geriatric population, India happens to be a young, growing country. If you look at India, then, although there is a massive diversity across states regarding total fertility rate, but overall India has a young population. India boasts of demographic dividend, and for any country, demographic dividend is an asset, both social and economic. But what happens when the same asset is experiencing malnourishment, when there is no, therefore, educational outcome? Because when there is no health outcome, when there is no nutritional outcome, there is no educational outcome, there is no economic outcome, and hence from this area in Maharashtra called the Melghat tribal region, reports have been coming about severe malnourishment among children. Now, gone are the days when we used to only say that as a percentage of GDP, India must try to compete with other nations and contribute at least 5% of GDP only to healthcare. But today we actually say, even in that 5% quota, we must talk about non-communicable disease that is causing a heavy burden on India's health sector, on the government expenditure, because out of all the welfare schemes, the most important ones happens to be those which focus on nutrition of the population. Now, we must understand, therefore, also that in India, if you look at the general estimates of National Family Health Survey, we have discussed earlier that more than 57% Indian women in the peak reproductive age group of 18 to about 49 are anemic. They have iron deficiency, they have folate deficiency, calcium deficiency. At the same time, we have a very high amount of child stunting and child wasting, all contributing to mortality. We have the problem of protein and hidden hunger. And all this is happening when it's been years we enacted the Poshan Abhiyan. Then there is another problem. If you look selectively at the new scientific research, then in the newspapers, we have spoken about type 5 diabetes. While type 1 and type 2 are commonly known, type 5 diabetes is a new phenomena associated with severe malnourishment, undernourishment, and that's the picture right now coming from this tribal area, because it is the Bombay High Court which has rebuked, criticized the Maharashtra government for repeated problems of malnourishment, repeated deaths, mortality because of malnourishment among young children, pregnant women, lactating mothers. And this is very sad, because even when India took up the Eat Right movement, Poshan Abhiyan, we said that the key target will be, the key beneficiaries should be the categories of these people: adolescent girls, pregnant women, lactating mothers, and young children, because mother health and child health are basically the same concept in the long term. So in this area of Melghat, still the problem of malnourishment is far from over. So today, it is the High Court that's asking a question. The High Court is openly and categorically saying that when there is so much money, large amount of funds that are being spent on welfare schemes like the ladkibahinscam scheme, then how come the basic necessity of vulnerable population like nutrition, access to primary, secondary health care, wage, the right to clean water, the right to sanitation and electricity supply are still not met for in the tribal areas? Now, tribal population is overall, if you see, we say that in terms of scheduled tribal estimation, about 8.6% of the population is still composed of this group as per the 2011 census data. We know that this is a highly vulnerable group. We have spoken about earlier case studies as well. We have seen Odisha with highest PVTG population, but then there are certain regions which are actually quite backward economically. there is still no provision of basic reproductive health care either. And that's why India as a country depends too much on last mile informal workers like Asha, Anganwadi, A&M, auxiliary nurse, midwife, who continue to be lowly paid, and still they account for massive healthcare demand fulfilling, because it is the poor people like these from this area who have no access to government healthcare centers. They are hardly even located in these high impacted regions. Today the High Court is raising a question, and the question of freebies in India is not new, by the way. Recently, during Bihar election, the Mahila Mukhyamantri Rozgar Yojana, then right now in Assam, the Urundoi scheme, and repeatedly many more such schemes have been questioned. People say that it is usually during election, before the election, or as a part of propaganda, that political parties are doing a direct benefit transfer, DBT. Heavy amount is being allocated to certain sections of population, but then it is barely ever reaching the ones who are really in the need, like these vulnerable tribal groups. At the same time, there was a whole big controversy about Manrega as well, as the Indian government is now choosing to rename it as VBGRAMG bill. And the government says now state governments will provide 60% of money for that. Whether it's PM Shri scheme or whether it's the new version of Manrega, the states are having a problem. The states are saying the government from the center is not giving us enough money to implement welfare schemes. But the court is asking, when you have money to spend on these welfare schemes, like for example in this case Ladli Behin, then how come there is no money to develop basic infrastructure? Quite a paradox. From 2015 in India, we are using estimation of poverty by using Niti Aayog's MDPI report, MDPI data, multi-dimensional poverty. It is using about 12 indicators to measure deprivation among people, not just income poverty, by the way. And among these 12 indicators, key chief indicators are water supply, healthcare, electricity, bank accounts, sanitation, and none of these have reached the tribals of Melghat. That's the concern court has raised, and court is also saying that despite repeated reminders, despite repeated orders raised since 2007, there are multiple deaths in this area, showing poor implementation of welfare agenda, poor implementation of well-being schemes, infrastructure development targets. Now, what are the key issues highlighted in this case study? There is a lack of medical facilities. Hospital construction has been pending for decades, and that accounts for a high rate of maternal mortality, lack of institutional birth. And this is happening when it's been about more than 15 years India announced schemes like Matritva Vandana Yojana, Janani Suraksha Yojana, and still you have tribals who do not have reproductive health access institutionally. Then you look at Manrega. Manrega has been giving job to people. Yes, the promised 100 days a year, but it is the poor tribal workers whose salary is not paid on time, and even when it's paid, then it's lesser than what's promised. Then there is no proper registration as promised through application, through app system, digital system, and then there is a gender wage disparity as well, which is quite shocking. There is a very poor nutrition support and health infrastructure. There's nothing when you talk about vaccination. There is no proper food fortification or supplementation that was promised. At the same time, reduced tribal welfare funding. There is hardly any funding that's earmarked for tribal welfare. Now again, this leads to the bigger debate about center-state fiscal relations. This time when the 16th Finance Commission has given its recommendations, a lot of states were complaining that the Central Finance Commission, the government, has barely given any money to the states. In fact, in the formula where you have the total divisible pool of tax, it is still 41%, but the government at the center is busy increasing surcharges and cesses. It's keeping more income for itself, and hardly any money is devolved into the states. Especially for welfare, there's no money coming. Plus, the central government also said, it told the states, adopt fiscal disciplining. I am not going to finance for your revenue deficit. Revenue deficit financing is not being done. Today, the states are complaining that there is no money to spend on tribal welfare, vulnerable group welfare. So the High Court is asking a question that please explain your priorities. In case it's a lack of funding, then how come you have the funds for implementing broader schemes like the Ladli Behin, of course, and then you don't have money to make a concrete action plan for inclusive growth and development of the tribals? Now this is a very important issue for GS1 and GS2, especially because it also relates to many articles from the Indian Constitution. Now naturally, at the heart of the debate is Article 21, the right to life. In this case, the right to healthcare, the right to nutrition is akin to the right to life, Article 21, and the right to life and dignity. At the same time, it is also a question on right to equality. Article 14. Here there is absolute denial of that. And then if you look at directive principles of state policy, then you should be able to find out which ones are directly relating to topics on nutrition, vulnerable groups, women and children welfare. Yes. And now what about the Sustainable Development Goals? Now, if you talk about SDG, then the first SDG itself talks about zero poverty anywhere in the world. And in this case, it is also SDG 2, zero hunger. We are looking at tribal problem of malnourishment. At a time when India as a society has enough potential to become a key exporter of food products like wheat, rice. In fact, we are selling some best quality rice varieties to many other countries like Costa Rica, many countries of Africa, many countries of Central America, and we are saying tribals are not having enough food to eat. So, Sustainable Development Goal is malnourishment among children, pregnant and lactating mothers in tribal areas. What about SDG 3? It absolutely relates to the topic here. It says good health and well-being. Yes, we must provide on good health, well-being, healthcare, reduce child mortality everywhere in the world by 2030. And this is 2026 we are talking about. Then SDG 1 itself, the fundamental zero poverty. And here we are looking at a rampant unpaid wage. We are looking at gender wage disparity, poor tribal livelihood linked scheme. It also in fact feeds into International Labour Organization. Out of the 8 mandatory conventions, the 6 that India has signed also promise that India as a society will implement gender parity when it comes to wage, basic floor wage. Plus, we have the 2020 Social Security Code, the 4 new labour laws, which have replaced earlier 29 labour laws. All of them talk about occupational safety, they talk about floor minimum wages, they talk about social security for informal sector workers, and then this is the picture on the ground. So the article is quite an eye-opening one on reality versus the policies that we have. And now here is a list of all the DPSP that relate to this article. So we are looking at Article 39 ENF that deal with health of children and their development. We look at 41. 41 was also under discussion when we had the controversy about Manrega's change. So the right to work, people have a right to public assistance and work, and the government should provide that. Then Article 47, the duty of the government to raise nutrition level and public health. Article 46, to promote education and economic interest of scheduled tribe and protect them from exploitation. And of course, why not Article 42 also? So therefore, DPSP are closely related to the topic. Quite an interesting case study that can be used in answer writing, essay writing. A quick practice question here. With reference to malnourishment related deaths in tribal areas, consider these statements. 1. Article 47 of the Constitution makes it a duty of the government to raise nutrition and improve public health. Second, Article 46 exclusively directs the government to promote educational and economic interest of scheduled tribe. SDG 3, Sustainable Development Goal 3 says good health and well-being is a priority for ending hunger in the world. 4. The right to nutrition has been interpreted as a part of Article 41, that's right to life, by the judiciary. Which of these are valid? Try to answer. It's an interesting UPSC relevant question. If you have any doubts, you can raise them in the comment box. And now a quick reminder, you could join our Telegram channel by using this QR code if you want more such important information and PDFs of the classes. At the same time, at StudyIQ, we have extended the Safalta Mahotsav sale by to 31st of March. So it's a limited period offer, 31st of March. And what do you get? 60% off on all UPSC courses, especially 27, 28. And if you use my code SPLIVE to register for these courses, maximum discount on top of that. So remember, you could be the next successful candidate provided you begin your preparation on time. So enroll today. Limited period offer. Always remember code SPLIVE. Thank you so much.